Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to go over the answers for assignment 5. And rather than, well, I probably will end up posting the answers to Sakai, but I thought it might be useful for us to kind of go through it together. And you can see kind of what I'm thinking about and what I'm considering when I'm making these trees, and hopefully understand something about the underlying logic of them. All right, so one thing that we haven't really discussed very much in lecture or in seminar is this idea of binary branching. So branching just means, well, the branches on these syntax trees. Um, and binary just means there's only two, they come in pairs. So basically, for these the trees that we're going to make, and in the version of syntax that William O'Grady, the author of the chapter, is using, one of the fundamental assumptions is this idea of binary branching. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule, like I think in ditransitive verbs, the way that we're doing that, and other coordinate clauses, but that's not that important. The important thing to think about or to remember is that we're going to always try to form binary connections. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we're going through the assignment. I wish I had a little bit more time to prepare, so I haven't prepared very much. I'm just going to be going through these live. Um, yeah, so if there's any redundancy or if I repeat myself, please forgive me. Okay, so let's start off with part 1 and the first phrase, the old men. All right, so I have made a little paint thing here. All right, so the first thing we want to do is identify the head. So the head is going to carry the core conceptual weight of the phrase. Again, one trick that I mentioned in my other videos is to try and take words out of the phrase and just see how meaningful it still is. So if we take the out of here, we have old men. That still seems to mean something. If we take out old, we have the men. Okay, so that still seems to mean something. And then if we take out men, we're left with the old. And of those three versions, well, that seems the least meaningful to me, or at least the farthest away from the meaning of the old men. So I guess that's another way you can think about it, is by removing words and then seeing how the meaning of that phrase compares to the entire phrase. So essentially, how much meaning is lost. And it's pretty clear to me that by removing the word men, the core concept of this phrase kind of disappears. So we're going to call this the head. Now we've identified our head, we're going to go in and do our parts of speech. So the is a determiner, old is an adjective, and man is a noun. All right. And well, given that the head is a noun, we are pretty confident this is going to be a noun phrase. But now we have a bit of a problem. So now we have, well, we could just stick all of these together and say it's a noun phrase. But that doesn't satisfy the binary branching requirement that we're using in the textbook. So I think Professor Libin or myself may have shown you a version of syntax where we can just connect all these three together. But for our purposes, well, how can I say this? The most correct answer will be one that takes binary branching into consideration. So, well, first we need to do a little bit of work here. So this adjective is going to be an adjective phrase. I think Professor Libin mentioned this a little bit in lecture today about how, well, phrases seem to have some psychological reality. And so we're going to assume that an adjective left on its own is really just an adjective phrase. Now that may not make intuitive sense to you. It doesn't completely to me, but I know that this is a pretty typical convention of syntax. This is common to all of the versions I've learned. All right, so again, now we have the same problem of three things want to attach to the noun phrase. So the way we're going to accommodate these individual parts is we're going to create an n bar where they can hang out. All right, there we go, there's my n bar. So now I've added my n bar, I can attach this adjectival phrase, up to the n bar. and connect my n bar down to the other n. All right, so then now we have our n bar, and we can attach that n bar along with the determiner to the noun phrase. So that's pretty neat. So by adding this n bar, we've basically satisfied our binary branching requirements, because here we have 1, 2, and 1, 2. And you might be saying, hey, but what about this? This only has one connection. And I don't really know what to say, because it seems like the binary branching requirement just says the maximum should be 2, and not in every case, which makes enough sense to me. All right, so there we go. That's the old man. Let's save that. So I think maybe I'll use these and create a Word document with all the answers in it later. All right, let's go on to the next one, which is the lumps in the gravy. Got that here. All right. I'm doing that cooking show thing where you act like I haven't prepared all of this already before. All right, okay, the lumps in the gravy. What's the head? Well, it's probably going to be a content word. So it's probably going to be either lumps or gravy. And, well, what are we really talking about here? If this noun phrase was the character in a book, well, it would be a kind of lump. And it would be a lump that happens to be in gravy. But the real story is about a lump, right? The gravy is just kind of the fact that this lump is in the gravy is just extra information. But really, the core concept here is these lumps. All right. So now we've kind of identified our head. Let's get our parts of speech in here. The determiner. Lumps is not a B. Lumps is an N. There we go. In is a preposition. The determiner. And gravy is a noun. All right. So there we go. Now what? Well, I can see here that my complement looks like it's probably a prepositional phrase. I've got a preposition here. And, well, let's start this way. I've got a determiner and a noun. So that sounds like a recipe for a noun phrase. So let's add that in. Okay. And now I've got a preposition and a noun phrase. Well, that seems like, again, the recipe for a prepositional phrase. So I've kind of just gone ahead and assumed that this preposition is the head. And how does that make sense given what I was just saying? It's likely a content word. I said that before. It seems like one of the main pieces of information in the story, right? Is that, well, like these lumps are in gravy. But let's think about it like this. If we think about this preposition as kind of linking these two nouns together and showing how they relate to one another. Well, lumps around gravy is pretty different than lumps in gravy. And, lumps near the gravy is also really different. This idea that the lumps are in the gravy is pretty central to this sentence, right? So anyway, that's my reasoning. That's how I kind of wrap my head around this idea that the preposition is the head in this prepositional phrase. All right, so again, now we've got our prepositional phrase, our noun and determiner. But we still have the same problem that we had before, in that we have three things that all want to attach to something, but we can't have all three of them doing that. So again, our n bar comes to the rescue. And we know this is an n bar because, well, the head of our phrase is a noun. So the whole thing must be a noun phrase. All right, but now I've got my n bar that this noun can attach to, and the preposition. And now it's just a simple matter of finishing up the tree by attaching the determiner as the specifier. And we've got our n bar, we've got our complement over here. It's all finished. Great. Okay, so now we can probably go through the next one a little bit faster. Okay, so quietly open the door. Well, quietly the door doesn't seem to make much sense. It definitely doesn't capture all the meaning that I needed to. Whereas and quietly open the, well, that's not bad. And quietly open door, that's not bad either. But I'm pretty sure that open is doing most of the conceptual work here. Okay, so we've got quietly as an adverb, open is a verb, the is a determiner, and door is a noun. All right, excuse my phone. All right, so let's just start from the easy part. Got a noun phrase here, and let's go determiner plus a noun there. Okay, so we've got a noun phrase. All right, so now, again, I have this similar problem. I have three things and only one thing for them to attach onto. So this is not going to work. So how can I do this? Well, first, if I remember that everything should be a phrase, I can add this adverbial phrase here, but that doesn't solve my problem. Well, so it seems like I need a V bar. All right, so I have my V bar there, and that gives me a place to attach my verb and my noun phrase. And so if you look on page, oh, I forget which page it's on. There's a little table in the book. I don't have my book with me. There's a little table in the book that gives examples of specifiers. And one of the specifiers that they mention is a pre-verbal adverbial phrase, or an adverb. So in this case, we have pre-verbal, so before the verb. So this is actually acting as a specifier. So this really works out with that X bar schema that they've laid out in the book as the kind of foundational blueprint. So again, here we've got our complement, we've got our X bar, we've got our X down here, XP, and our specifier. So this works pretty nicely with that. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, we'll jump in the lake. All right, so this is a little bit tricky because I definitely would have labeled this as an auxiliary until today's lecture, where Professor Libin kind of, well, he made a good argument as to why this is a tense marker and not an auxiliary. And I well, it's not my place to believe him or not. um, I'm more convinced this should be an auxiliary, but again, for let's stick to this system of syntax that's been kind of laid out for us in the book, because no matter what you believe about syntax, it's really important to stay consistent and to learn to follow a certain set of rules. All right, so I'm going to go jump in preposition, determiner, and a noun. All right, so again, let's start from the easy part at the back. I'm seeing a noun phrase here. Oh, I forgot to mention that, well, the head is definitely jump. That is clearly the important thing that's happening here. In the lake is just extra information, and the fact that it will happen in the future is also extra information. The most important thing being that we are jumping. All right, and I've got a prepositional phrase here. I only have two things that want to attach to it, so that's convenient. No need for any like P bar or anything like that. All right, so there we go. So now, well, so I have three things that want to attach to what I would consider to be the same thing, all part of a verb phrase. So, well, until today, I would have added a V bar here and then attached them all like that. But that's not what we should be doing. Because while this is a verb phrase, tense attaches higher up on the tree than the verb phrase. So up here, we need a T, and it's going to be a T bar. All right. So now this becomes a lot more clear what has to happen. This verb comes up here and attaches the verb phrase. The verb phrase attaches the prepositional phrase. And this T can come up here, and there we go. So this entire thing is a T bar. And would you be right to put this up to a TP? Probably not, because we don't have a noun phrase to complete the sentence. So that's it. All right. So now we've got all of our phrases done. Now it's time to do a sentence. So basically, we're just going to do the same thing that we were doing before. We'll start with our parts of speech. Make sure I'm doing this right. Yep. All right. That's determiner. This is noun. We're just basically combining things we've already done before. So rather than the old men, we have the young boys, and quietly open the gate, quietly open the door. So we're going to be merging those two together. All right, so if you remember how we did that, well, let's do a noun phrase here. Okay. And, well, we've got our adverb here that we know is an adverbial phrase and also acts as a specifier. So that's all really important information. So because this is a specifier, it's going to want to attach to the VP up here. And given that we now have three things that want to all be part of the VP, I need a V-bar. Whoops. We don't need this. No more bars. This bar is really crooked. Okay, let's make a better bar. There we go. And now we have our V-bar and our specifier, so that can form our phrase. Great. All right, now over here, we've got our adjective. Oh, old habit, just AP for our purposes. Okay, then the AP can make an N bar. The N and the adjectival phrase can attach to our N bar. And above that, I want to have a noun phrase. So our specifier here will attach, and our noun will attach here. All right, so now we have the two basic components of a sentence. We have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. Not that every sentence needs both of those things, but certainly the vast majority of them do. All right, so now we have the whole thing being a tense phrase. So for it to be a tense phrase, we need a tense. And that's going to be T bar. Let's just attach everything at the very end. So let's first deal with this T bar. It's a bit weird. Yeah. So how can I explain this? Okay, so if we look at this sentence, the young boys quietly open the gate, well, we can see that's in the present tense. And the really odd thing is that that is then marked by this minus past. So what this tells me is that in this system of syntax, we're assuming the default to be the past. So whenever something is in the present, we're basically just saying it's not in the past. Now, I know enough about linguistics to know that there's a really good reason why we're supposed to be thinking about it that way. But I don't know enough about linguistics to tell you exactly what that reason is. But again, like I mentioned before, it's just really good practice to learn how to follow conventions. But always keep in the back of your mind, well, like a little red flag, being like, oh, I don't really understand why I'm doing this. But those are certainly good questions to ask. I'm sure if I actually put a little bit of effort into looking it up, I could find out why. Maybe I'll do that before next seminar. All right, so now it's just a matter of joining everything up. So the T bar always acts as always connects in between the verb phrase and the tense phrase, and yeah, noun phrase connects up that way. And that is our sentence. Okay. Well, okay, so in this video, we went over all of the phrases in the homework in the assignment 5 and the sentence. So hopefully that gives you some useful insight into how to make syntax trees, what the best version of these syntax trees looks like, and some of the underlying logic behind them. Yeah, all right. Well, thanks for watching. Again, if you have any questions, you can always send me an email or put a message up on Sakai. Um, yeah, I'll see some of you in seminar this week, and I'll see the rest of you on Monday next week. All right, goodbye.